What's up, YouTubers? It's me, Johnny. Um, I got a viewer question today about how to start a business in Latin America, and how I would do it. Specifically, they are referring to Peru. Um, Peru is one of the more regulated countries in Latin America, and so like anywhere else, I actually know people in Peru. My friend Tom, he lived in Peru and lived in Guatemala, and so I have some information from him. But anyways, most Latin American countries, you can just form a local company and do your business through there. Now, the trouble with Latin America and using an SA corporation is usually there's not a good way for a payment processor so you can process low fees, and that's why I bring that all up kind of at the beginning of the video. So in general, I'd either do one of two things if I was on a tourist visa. This question was how to start a business when you're on a tourist visa. What I would just do is start up a business, like a service-based business or brick and mortar based business. Online would be better, it would work better, but if you're doing a business in Latin America or specific Peru or Mexico or wherever, you have to figure out what licenses you need. Like say in the Philippines or in Guatemala, there's a few licenses you'll need, and they're not really, at least in my experience from people I know doing this, this is not hard to get. You don't need to have a residency. Again, I want to stress, in all parts of Latin America, this could be different, but that's not really the hardest thing to do or to get. And you, generally speaking, don't need an SA corporation. So if I flew in on a tourist visa, what I would do is figure out what I want to do. Do I want to have a brick and mortar business? Do I want to have a service-based business? Like a service-based business, I mean like teaching English, providing a service. Like, again, I'm not saying you should do this, but like a lot of people are starting a business how to live in another country, and they're charging kind of high fees. Now, for people who are very knowledgeable about it, I think the fees can be worth it. It just depends. But there are a lot of people in the market now who are charging high fees, and in my experience, don't have a lot of experience talking about what they do talk about. Anyways, there's a few, but and there's a few people who like have really in-depth experience, like in one country or another, like say Ecuador. Like I'm thinking of Dominic. Like I don't even know if he even does that, but if he did, he's someone that's very knowledgeable how to start a business, do a lot of different things in Ecuador. But anyways, I would decide what I want to do, and based on that, I would probably, if I didn't have a lot of capital, I wouldn't get an SA. But there are circumstances where you might actually have to get one. Getting an SA corporation in places like Uruguay, a friend of mine started one. Again, this was many years ago, and some of the banking laws have changed as far as the privacy laws concerning a personal account as opposed to a corporate account. But anyways, I would just want to put that out there. But for less than a couple $100, he started a company in Uruguay. Now, keep in mind, this is years ago. He did it himself, and things have changed. Things have changed. But anyways, if you put the account in your own name, it's not going to be quite as expensive. Now, if you don't, it can be way more expensive. And then again, if you're using an offshore provider, it's going to be even more expensive. It really depends how you go about doing these things. So that's what he did. But anyways, my point is you're going to have to figure out what the licenses are. And a lot of times you can operate a business without a license, but eventually someone will catch up with you and you'll need to get that license. It's the same in the US, same in the Philippines, same in Guatemala. I know people in Guatemala who run bars, never had a liquor license and never had any issues. Now, I wouldn't suggest that. If you're up in the mountains and, the mountains are higher and the emperor's far away, that's how the Guatemala is. So if you're up on the lake, like I just know people do it and they've never had any issues. I mean, not ever. If you're in a big city, that can be different. Getting a liquor license is not too expensive. I'm not counting Mexico. I'm counting any, outside of Mexico. Mexico can be expensive to free depending on how you go about it. Anyways, figure out what license you need and then get them. They usually don't cost that much. They're really not that hard to get. If you cannot get them, I would get a girlfriend and have her get them. That's just what I would do. Anyways, the biggest problem you're going to have, outside of your ID, and what you're actually going to do is have a payment processor that processes small payments. If I was coming from Pakistan or India, which I think the viewer may be coming from, who left a comment, it's so easy to start an LLC in the United States as a foreigner. You can do it online for many couple $100, and then you can have that entity have a US based dollar bank account. That way you can process small transactions through PayPal or through other apps online. And if you can access those apps through an LLC in the US, you can process payments in dollars, and then that's kind of the best thing, and that's what I would do. Now, if you're in a foreign country and you're accepting foreign cards, that's going to be a little different. The thing is, if you start an LLC, now it really depends. Peru's more advanced than, say, Guatemala. So there you would start an LLC. Again, if you didn't want to do it in your own name, and figure out the processing, a way to process payments at a scale that's not costing you very much money. That's the biggest problem you're going to face, in my opinion, is how to process payments in local currency and then in dollars. That's why if you're coming from outside the US, it's so easy to start an LLC. It's so cheap, and you can use all the US-based apps through your LLC to process payments cheap, like through PayPal. Now, if you're an individual and you're coming from any of those countries, and you can use PayPal to process payments, then forget about, unless you have a lot of money you want to invest that way. But you're going to have a payment processors for your local clients to pay you in Peru or whatever Latin country you're in. And in general, more and more people are using these apps, and they're using ATM cards and credit cards more to make payments. So you have to keep that in mind. If you're the kind of business where it's just mostly cash and it's not as much cards, you can do everything in cash with or without an LLC. This video is about the technical aspects of doing all that, because I think that's what the viewer's getting at. You can roll up into Peru. I mean, I know people have done this, or Guatemala for that matter. And in general, foreigners, whether they're legal residents or whether they're tourists, you can buy property. Not every single country, but most of them in general. I'm generalizing. So you can't own property like what people do in the Philippines or in Thailand. Like corporations do this, individuals do this. They lease a property or land or an office space. Right now, you can lease a two-room office place right here in Shayla for like under $300. And of course, there's more expensive things you're gonna have to do, but I'm just saying as a generalization. What I would do is I would lease or rent an office space, or it depends what kind of business it was. Like if you need to be in a mall, you could do that. That's not too expensive. But if you're going to set up a business selling stuff like electronics or whatever, you just lease or rent a space, and you just figure out those details, and then all you have to do is take cash. That's what I would do. Or for clients who want to pay by card, if that's an issue, you either figure out a local way to process those payments. That's probably going to be with a local bank account, like in Peru, because Peru's more advanced than Guatemala. They probably have a process that does it. I'm not familiar with it. If not, you'll probably have to start a local LLC there, and then as a tourist, and you'll comply with the laws as far as paying your tax and all that. Another thing I want to point out, in Latin America, there's a lot of visas where you can get a visa through a corporation, and usually you have to invest a certain amount of money, is like 50 grand, 100 grand, things like that. Now, what other people have done in South America is you can start up a company. The company issues you an employment contract, and of course the capital in the corporation pays your salary, and then you get a visa through working for your own company. Now you can do that on a tourist visa, and then you can turn that tourist visa into a visa to work there. So you don't need you don't, depending on the country, you don't need a work permit. Some countries will slide it in on that. Like when you go through the process, you'll get the work permit, and then you can work for your company. Because I realize there's going to be people saying you can't legally work. Yeah, that's true, but in Latin America, no one really cares about stuff like that. That's why I say if you just want to come in on a tourist visa and just start a business. I mean, I just know so many people who've done that. That's how foreigners live there. I mean, they don't normally work a job unless it's teaching English for one of these institutes or something. They start a business. They usually use their home bank in the United States or England or Europe, whatever, to process the payments through PayPal or another app. But if you're coming from Southeast Asia, you may not have the opportunity. So for some of you guys, and even for Europeans, I know Europeans, they get an LLC in the U.S. so they can process dollar transactions very, very cheap through the U.S. banking system there through an LLC, which is very cost effective to get and buy. So I don't know if that helped anyone starting a business, but in general, if you're going to start a business on a tourist visa, you just fly in, figure out the kind of business you're going to start. If you're going to start a brick and mortar, you're going to have to lease somewhere. Most countries, that's not going to be an issue. The second thing you're going to do, if it's a service-based business, like you're going to, you're a consultant, you just have a payment process for your clients wherever they are in the world to pay you, and that's it. Or if your clients are local, you may have to start up a local SA corporations. And then the problem, again, I'll stress this again, not everywhere, but a lot of times to process payments can be a pain in the neck and cost a lot of money for small transactions. If it's just an SA corporation with a bank account, anyone can wire money into it, but it's different when it's outside, when people are wiring money outside the country or offshore money because of the territorial taxes, so it's tax-free. If it's clients inside the country of Peru, then you're going to have to comply and pay tax and all that, which is it's a different proposition, no problem there, but you're going to use a different processor, and it's going to be different tax laws that govern, how you do maneuver around that. So it really is complicated. This video is not really going to be useful for most people, but in general, if you want to roll up into a country on a tourist visa, you just got to decide, is it going to be service-based or is it going to be like brick and mortar? How will you process the payments? If your clients are inside the country, you're going to have to start up some way to open a bank account, and it's getting harder and harder to open up a bank account on a tourist visa. Not impossible, just difficult. And then sometimes they'll close out the account. But if you can do that and process payments that way. If you can't, you're going to have to start up an SA corporation, and then your lawyer will help you get the bank account. If you can do that, if your Spanish is really good and you can do it yourself or have someone help you, then it won't cost as much. But a lawyer, I would suggest a lawyer, find a local lawyer, and have them do that and set it up. If it's in the bank account in your name, you probably have reporting requirements in your country depending on where you're coming from. If it's not, it's not. But that's one thing. If the bank account is not in your name and an employee of the company's name, that's another whole kettle of fish I don't really want to comment on. But the more complicated it gets, the more it's going to cost you to set this up. So as a tourist, maybe you want to get away where you don't have to set up an SA corporation. But if you do, and especially in South America where things are a little bit different, and you use the corporation to incorporate an employment contract so you can work for that company, that will entitle you to work in that country. Like in Chile, if you have an employment contract through your company and it's 20 hours a week, that's enough to qualify for a work permit, which will qualify you for residency. So after 2 years, you become a citizen. So I'm just pointing out, not all countries are like that. I'm just pointing out that's one thing you can do. What people usually do is they get a SA corporation to invest in land or a business, and they put a certain amount of assets in it because lawyers and the government wants to see you put 50 or 100, 200,000, and then they qualify that way. That's like Brazil and some other countries, but in like Chile and some other countries, you just form the corporation. You use the corporation to give you a employment contract. Through the employment contract, then you apply for the work permit, and then through all that, you apply for residency, and then that's what you do. And you just work through your local. That's what I'm trying to get to, is you just work through that company and do your business. But again, this question was more about, as a tourist, you just see where you fit in. Figure out an employment, or figure out a way for people to pay you. If everything's just cash, then you don't have to worry about anything. Most of what I said, but more and more in Latin America, people want to pay with an ATM or credit card. But if it's a cash-based business in a smaller community, which is most likely to be all cash, you just rent something. You figure out what your product or service is going to be, and then you just do that, and then you just go from there. And eventually, you're going to probably want to formalize your relationship with the government there and start an SIA company, start an employment contract, and then eventually get a work permit and also to a um, residency, and then just do that. Anyways, it's a complicated subject. Um, you won't be the first one doing it. For the viewer who asked this question, good luck. And also, to that's how most foreigners live in Latin America. They just start an SA corporation. If if they have a really big trouble starting a local personal bank account in their own name, that's used to be easy, but now it's getting harder. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you can probably just easily set up a local account. You don't need the SA corporation. You use that local account to process your payments for local people. And then, if you're coming from a foreign country and your clients are mostly from around the world and you're not a U.S. citizen, you can do this as a U.S. citizen, but then it's a little different where you're going to set up your LLC. But anyways, you just set up an LLC in the States, use your payment process through your LLC, and then you can process dollars and whatever. And then, go from there. Anyways, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks.